My last video was a strategy review of a strategy that was on TradingView. And in that video, I invited suggestions for other strategies that you might want me to review. So I've had several suggestions, and one of those was for the YMS indicator. And the suggestion included a copy of the indicator, which I downloaded and ran in my MetaTrader just to see how it worked. But there was no actual strategy there. This is just an indicator, what I term generally a junk indicator, that shows just buy and sell signals with no indication of why those signals have occurred. So I did a little searching online to find more information about this indicator and to see if there was an actual strategy behind it. So here are the search results I got, just the first page, and that led me to this website, YMS in Forex, who apparently are the owners and proprietors of the YMS Scalper Index. And this is the YMS Scalper version 2 with a brief description, but the objective seems to be nothing more than to enter the trade and take a take profit at a small number of pips and a stop loss at a small number of pips. So at this point, I've decided that this indicator is just a junk indicator and it's not really a strategy that I want to review. But because there are other results in this search page, I decided to have a look at some of those, and I've gone down a rabbit hole. And so where I would normally not have bothered to make this video, the rabbit hole led to some interesting things that I thought you might want to see. So I'm just going to take you on my journey here. Now, as I said, I did this search and I came up with this web page, which has the non-repaintable YMS Scalper. I found several other web pages that actually allowed me to download the indicator for free. And the downloads gave me not only version 2, but version 1.2. So now I had the original file that I'd been sent, plus version 1.2 and version 2. So I'm going to load those into MetaTrader, just so that you can see the three different files. So now I've got the three different indicators. I've got version 1, version 1.2, and version 2.0 here. And you can see straight away that version 1.2 and version 2 both include this sub window with an indicator drawn, and version 1 doesn't have that sub window. Also here in version 1 I have a clear up arrow indicator at that point, and I've tried to scroll these to the same place, but there's no indication on version 1.2 or version 2. If I scroll all of these charts forward a little, you can see that version 1.2 and version 2 do show indicators, and here's one that's in approximately the same place as version 1, but there are differences. Also, I have the data window open, and I'll just zoom into that. As I scroll over the version 1 indicator, you can see that there are two signals, buy and sell, that are blank most of the time until I move the cursor onto a candle that has an arrow, and then you can see that one of those turns into a value. So this indicator is using a standard buffer-based value to draw arrows on the screen, and they appear when there is a value to show. If I scroll over the same thing on the 1.2 and 2.0, you can see that I have a value 2, a MACD value, a signal, a histogram. Let me actually expand that a little. You can see that I have several values, but there are values at almost every bar. If I hover over the line that actually has an arrow indicating it, the signal and histogram still show as blank. The MACD value 2 and the YMS Scalper still show values. If I go over to version 2, there are less values showing. So there's a YMS Scalper value and there's a value 2. Now I can't show these at the same time because I can only hover over one window at a time. But if I just go, for example, to the same candle, this is the candle at, what is this, 28th of December 22 at 1700. I have a YMS Scalper value of 2 and a value 2 of 104. If I go to the same candle on the 1.2 version, then I have the same values for the YMS Scalper and the value 2, but I also have this MACD value. Okay. Without going into 1.2 and 2.0 very much, this tells me that the version 1 was quite different. And also because version 1 and 1.2 and 2.0 are quite different, particularly since one of these uses values from a buffer and the other two simply draw objects on the screen. I was going to have to write different expert advisors to test each of these. So I'm just going to look at version 1 first. And spoiler alert, this does not go well. So here in version 1, I also noticed that the indicators that are showing in the data window show Beast Super Signal Buy and Beast Super Signal Sell, which doesn't really sound like they belong to a YMS indicator. So I became suspicious that perhaps this is not the YMS indicator. It's very different to version 1.2 and 2, and it also has this Beast Super Signal. So back to searching, and I searched for Beast Super Signal. I found an entry on Forex Factory, which when I followed it simply took me to the website for Beast Trading Software here. And the Beast Super Signal for sale at $151.20. And this also looks quite different to the versions that I have. But when I reviewed it further, I find that this is a version 4 released. Now this is showing version 4 and it's a commercial product, and it looks quite different to the version 1 that I have. But if you scroll the page down, this indicates that there is a version 1.1 still available, and there is even a link to the version 1 source code and the version 1.1 source code and the Super Signal 1.1. And there is even a note somewhere that version 1 is available for free on the internet because they found bugs in it. So I think that's where the version 1 that I have came from. If I just go to the Super Signal v1.1, this looks very similar to the indicator that I have. And in fact, if I go to the inputs here, they've taken a picture of the inputs, signal depth, deviation, backstep, stochastic length, filter, and so on. If I go back to MetaTrader, and I'll just close these other windows. Look at the indicator list. The inputs here very closely match those. So I'm reasonably convinced that what was sent to me originally as the YMS indicator is actually the Beast Super Signal indicator version 1. Let's just go back to the website. And while they only distribute version 1.1 from the website, I think I have version 1.0. And they also sell the source code for a reasonable amount. And the note down here in the source code indicates that version 1.0 had a repainting bug. So what I think I have for testing is version 1.0 of the Beast Super Signal indicator here. Let's follow this rabbit hole just a little bit further on the Beast Super Signal indicator. So I have here version 1.0 of what I believe to be the Beast Super Signal indicator. I've loaded it for Euro USD. What I'm going to do now is also run the strategy tester on the same indicator just for November 22. So that's done. What I'm going to do is arrange these windows horizontally, and then I'm going to scroll them so that the same dates are showing in both. That's close to lined up. Now in the top window is the standard Euro USD where I've simply loaded the indicator onto the chart. And in the bottom window is the visual where I've run this through the strategy tester. And what I can see here on this point, which is 23rd of November at 12 midday, here is a down arrow showing in the visual test. The same arrow does not occur here on the chart. I can also see on the chart that I have a down arrow here on the 28th of November at 1700, but on the 28th of November 1700 in the visual test I don't have that. Also, if I go to the journal, this has shown me all the places where it tried to raise an alert. Now, you can't raise alerts in the strategy tester, but it has shown them in the log. And if I look, for example, 29th of November 0600, there is a buy alert. 29th of November 0600. If I go to the 29th of November, this is on the visual chart at 0600, there is no arrow here. What appears to be happening with this particular indicator is that it's raising the alert, but then repainting if it decides that that should not have happened. So if you're reacting to the alerts, you may well have taken a trade that the indicator later cancels. I also think that because I'm getting different arrows here on the chart when I simply load the indicator compared to on the chart as it's running through, that the formula it uses when it's recalculating history does not match the same formula that's used when it's calculating live alerts. So just to take this a little bit further, I'm going to close that and maximize this. So if I look at the indicator properties, and remember this says YMS, but this is actually the Beast Super Signal. The first three of these, depth, deviation, and backstep, look very similar to the zigzag indicator. I'm going to drag the zigzag indicator onto the chart and set these to the same values, 60, 5, and 3. And what I can see here, I'll just scroll out to the end of the chart and then gradually move backwards. I have a zigzag peak and just after that a sell signal. I have a zigzag low and a buy signal. Zigzag high and a sell signal. Scroll backwards a little. Zigzag low, and up here is a buy signal. A zigzag high, and way down here a sell signal. So the signals occur shortly after the zigzag high and low points, but they don't always occur on the next candle or the candle after that, and I think that's part of some of the other properties. Now, I don't have the source code and I can't really determine what additional algorithm goes into determining when these appear, but you only ever find one signal after a zigzag peak. The repainting happens in the strategy tester because I know that the zigzag indicator repaints, and which is why the zigzag is a bad indicator to use in live trading, because you won't be able to determine if you've just reached a peak or if that peak is going to be overridden in a few bars time with a new peak. And so because this is raising alerts which are then effectively cancelled because the arrows are redrawn, and that's what I think is leading to those multiple alerts being raised, that because it's using the zigzag indicator, it may come up with a peak here and say, oh, I need to trade, but then a new peak forms, the arrow disappears, and that's why in the visual that has happened, and the alerts are being raised, but the indicators are not there. So if you traded on the alerts, you could be losing a lot of money simply because you're trading on alerts that should not be there. And that's about as far as I'm going to take this. So while I was sent something that's called the YMS indicator, this is the Super Beast indicator, and it is an old version that even on their website they say had this repainting problem and has been fixed since. And even the inputs to this look nothing like the inputs on the current version 4 from the Beast Super Signal. But that's not the end of my rabbit hole. I now have the version 1.2 and 2.0 of the YMS Scalper. And the YMS Scalper website, if we go back to that, does say that we are only up to version 2. Now this is a commercial indicator, and again, I'm not going to purchase this just to run a test, but it does look very similar to the versions that I downloaded. Let me go back to MetaTrader. I'll load version 1.2 with all of the default values, and note here that the inputs moving average, price action, and stochastic 12.26.9. I then go to the next and I'll load the version 2 and see here that the inputs have changed, moving average and stochastic only 12 and 9. Say okay, and now I'll just tile the window. So these are slightly different. There's a different input here, and there's a different input on 1.2 compared to 2.0, but the indicators are the same. Now, they look different, but this indicator, being a downward pointing sideways arrow, is actually highlighting this candle next to the arrow. And so that is just over 1800 on the 28th of December, where this is using a different type of arrow. It's just using a diamond for the down arrow, and that is 1800 on the 28th of December. If I scroll these back and find an up, there's one, and there. So if I go to the candle that the arrow is actually pointing at, that is 1600 on the 16th of December. Over here, there. And that is also 1600 on the 16th of December. The indicators, at least as far as my testing goes, of when these buy and sells are being triggered are the same on both of these versions, but they do use a different symbol, and therefore it looks different. The charts showing in the bottom are similar, but not the same. You'll see that on the left there's a double line, and on the right there's a single line, and this single line on the right matches the red line here. Maybe I can just make those. I'll scroll them forward to today so that they're lined up. The single line on the right matches the red line on the left, which is the smoother line, but there's only one line here. But then I looked at that more carefully. If I go to the indicator properties and I go to the colors, there are actually two lines. One of them is black, and so I can't see it because I have a dark background. And I'll just make it white. And now this line shows up, which is the same as the line on the 1.2 indicator. Also, if I go back to one of these websites, this one, this describes the indicator and says that it shows this line, which is nothing more than a stochastic. I didn't agree with that. I don't think this is a stochastic. So what I did was load a MACD onto that chart. And while the MACD shows up as a histogram by default, you can see that it matches that white line. And if I just scroll and highlight the data window here as I scroll across, you can see the MACD value is always the same as the YMS scalper value. But you can see that value 2 from the YMS scalper is different to the signal line from the MACD. And the signal line is that original line that they had showing here. So that means something to me. Now, a MACD by default uses a simple moving average to calculate the signal line. So my next thought was, what happens if I apply an exponential moving average as the signal instead of a simple moving average? I drag a moving average onto the chart, set my period to 9 and change the method to exponential, and the apply to, I'm choosing previous indicators data. The previous indicator was the MACD. And now if you look at the data window, as I scroll my arrow across, the moving average that I've just added, the 9-period moving average exponential, is the bottom value showing, and the value 2 from the YMS indicator is the same as that. So if I remove these extra indicators, this chart at the bottom of the YMS scalper seems to be the MACD line and the MACD signal line replaced by an exponential moving average instead of a simple moving average. Now that's all very interesting, but it tells me nothing about the actual logic behind finding these buy and sell signals. If I look at that sell signal, for example, that's just after the MACD has crossed below the signal. Okay. Scroll backwards a little. Here's a buy signal, which is just after the MACD has crossed above, but there's no signal here where the MACD crossed below, and here's a place where the MACD crossed above and there is still no up signal. So I can't determine from this what the logic is, and here I have buy signals and yet the MACD is still below its signal line. It's entirely possible that this MACD is just here to give you something visually to look at, but means nothing as far as their strategy is concerned. But that is as much as I've found about this version 2. And the version 1.2, as far as I can tell, is exactly the same, because I haven't found any value differences. But here in the version 1.2, if I go to the indicators list again, they've actually included this price action number, which is the second value from the MACD, where that's hidden in the version 2. So the only inputs here seem to be standard MACD inputs. And the logic may have something to do with the price action around each of these signals and the convergence or divergence of the MACD and the signal line. It may have nothing to do with crossing over. The direction of the line could be anything. I really don't know. But the next step is to actually run some tests. Now, I'm not going to test the version 1 that I was asked to test, simply because I found that it is an old version, has repainting, and the results are just completely inconclusive. But I will run my strategy tester, the usual tests, on this version 2 of the YMS scalper indicator. So today, given that there are errors in the beast indicator that I have, I'm only going to be testing the YMS scalper. And I like to try to do these tests in a nice standardized way. So here are the rules or the environment settings that I'm going to be using. I'm running this on MT4, and that's because the YMS scalper is only available on MT4. I'm running this on the YMS scalper version 2.0, although to date I haven't observed any differences between the 1.2 version and the 2.0 version, other than that the symbols on the chart have changed and the chart in the bottom has an extra line or shows a different line. This is only, as I said earlier, the free downloaded copy that I found online by doing a quick search, and there is no guarantee that this exactly matches the paid version, but I don't have access to the paid version and I'm not going to go out and purchase one to do this test. So instead of considering this as being a test of the YMS scalper, you can consider this as a test of the downloadable for free YMS scalper. I'm running on the 1 hour chart because the bit of documentation I've found suggests that that is the best time frame to run this. I have to run this in visual mode rather than in the non-visual mode in the strategy tester, simply because this indicator draws objects on the screen, so I can't simply add the indicator in as an iCustom type indicator. I have to let it draw those objects on screen, and that means I have to run in visual mode so that I can then monitor for those objects being created. I'm running it on a demo account from Black Bull Markets, but I have had to download some additional data, and that has come from MetaQuotes, so the data that I'm using may not be exactly as Black Bull Markets would have had it. I'm running this from the 1st of June 22 up to the 1st of December 22, but I'll be running this on my standard set of 6 instruments, and 3 of those didn't have that much data available, so they will only be from September to December. As the little bit of documentation I found on the strategy suggests, stop loss should be from 10 to 30 pips and take profit should be from 5 to 10 pips. So I don't want to try every possible combination of those. I'm only testing one. I'm testing the stop loss at 30 pips and the take profit at 10 pips. Now, because this uses an indicator, which is potentially a paid indicator, I'm not going to be releasing the expert advisor for you to run your own tests as I did with the earlier video, because firstly, I don't want to distribute what may be a pirated version of an indicator. But secondly, it would be very hard to get this through the MetaTrader market because it does use that visual mode and simply won't run without the visual objects being created on screen. I will, however, be creating 2 further videos, and this is part of the reason why I actually decided to make this video, because I found that the coding to create the tests for both this and the beast indicator might be useful. So I'll be releasing 2 further videos where I'll show how to write the code to test the beast indicator and the code to test this YMS scalper. And you're free to download the code for that and create your own. And then you might want to add in the paid version of this scalper if you wish. I said that I run a set of 6 standard instruments. Here they are: Euro, Pound, Gold, Oil, Ethereum, and the S&P index. I'm going to be trading a 1 lot size on all trades, and this is a fixed lot size, so I'm not going to be varying it according to equity, because that just makes the test much easier if I stay on a fixed lot size. So I'll be trading 1 lot on each trade for each of these 6 instruments. So now let's watch the tests run, and I'll come back and show the results. Now I have the results, and before I go into too much detail, I'll just say that I believe for oil, Ethereum and S&P that the standard settings of a 10 pip take profit and a 30 pip stop loss are too tight to be an accurate reflection of what might happen with these instruments. But given that those are the only settings that I've been able to find in any kind of documentation, I'm also not going to simply change that. So I'm going to go with those settings, but that means that I think the results for the WTI, ETH and SPX are invalid. But now looking at the others, I have a similar number of trades for the euro, the pound and gold, 121 for euro, 114 for pound and 112 for gold. Over a 6-month period on a 1 hour chart, that's not a lot of trades to be taking, so I'm not sure that I would call this a scalping indicator. We can see that the wins are 87 for euro, 88 for pound and 54 for gold. What's important here, remembering that the take profit is 10 pips and stop loss is 30 pips, so I would expect the number of wins and losses to be roughly in that ratio to break even. You can see here for the euro I've got 34 to 87, which is roughly the right ratio but a little bit low, and so I have a loss of 1,589.59. The pound has a better ratio where the number of losses are lower and the number of wins, well, it's really only one higher. So that's a better ratio, and the pound is the only instrument here that's made a profit at $956. And then gold has a very close to 1-to-1 ratio of win to loss, and it has a $1,200 loss. The reason this is not as much of a loss as the euro is basically the difference between the value of a single lot for gold and slightly lower count of total number of trades. So overall, running this blindly, this is what I would expect over that 6 months. Now, perhaps over a different 6-month period, you'll get a different set of results. This is what I've obtained, and I've given you all of the settings that I used to run this test. So you can try to recreate this yourself, choose a different period, change the settings for the take profit and stop loss, do whatever you like with that. But these are my findings on this indicator. As I mentioned just before running the tests, I'm going to be taking the next 2 videos to show you how to write the code to run the test for this YMS indicator and for the Beast indicator as well. It'll be in 2 different videos because they are quite different and show different methods of coding, because one of these uses a standard indicator buffer where the other draws objects on the screen. And there are a few little complications to consider with both of those. If you have suggestions for other strategies that you'd like me to review, then please go to Discord. There'll be a link in the description, and you can go there and add them to the channel for suggestions for strategies to review. But as I did mention way up at the beginning of this video, simply pointing me to an indicator that gives buy and sell signals is not a strategy, and I won't be reviewing any further of those. So I hope this has been useful to you. If it has, click the like button and click the subscribe button if you want to see more of my videos. So until the next time, thank you for watching.